25 Cromwell Street, Gloucester, became known as the House of Horrors. In 1992, police would discover 6 bodies buried inside the house and 2 in the back garden. At a later date, 3 other bodies would be found elsewhere. 11 young women, all, it was discovered, had been tortured and murdered by the married couple who lived there, Fred and Rosemary West. Shockingly, one of their own children, the West's young daughter, 16-year-old Heather, was among the bodies found in the garden. Just how evil these 2 were would become clear to everyone as even more remains were discovered. Fred West was born in the small town of Muchmarcle in Herefordshire on the 29th of September 1941 to Stephen West and Daisy Hill. According to Fred, his sisters were SA'd from an early age, claiming both his parents subjected them to many forms of SA. It's thought that he was also abused by his mother from an early age, but this has never been confirmed as far as I know. He was close to his mother, and she was fiercely protective of him. At the age of 15, Fred had left school and started work. At the age of 17, while riding a motorbike, he was involved in an accident that left him in a coma for 7 days. The head injury and subsequent metal plate inserted into his skull is believed to have attributed to his violent outbursts. He also suffered a broken leg that left him with one leg shorter than the other. At the age of 19, he tried to put his hand up a girl's skirt. She pushed him away and he fell down the steps of a fire escape, once again hitting his head. His family had practically disowned him when he was convicted of molesting a 13-year-old girl. He managed to evade a prison term when the doctor said his head injuries caused him to suffer severe epileptic fits. At the age of 21, he had moved back to Muchmarcle after his family let him back into their lives. Here he met an ex-girlfriend, Catherine Rena Costello, a feisty young woman and said to be more than a match for Fred. She was also pregnant. Catherine had fallen pregnant by an Asian man before her and Fred had got back together. They decided to keep the child, and in 1962, Catherine married West. They moved to Catherine's native home of Scotland, and in 1963 she gave birth to Charmaine. But because they didn't want people to know it wasn't Fred's, they told everyone that the child she was carrying at the time had died at birth. Then told everyone that they had adopted the little girl Charmaine. A year later, Catherine would give birth to Fred's first child, a little girl, Anne-Marie. They would return to Gloucestershire after an incident where Fred accidentally ran over and killed a 4-year-old boy. While married to Catherine, a young and apparently naive woman, and friend of Catherine's, 18-year-old Anne McFall, came to live with them. She apparently flirted heavily with Fred, and eventually they would become lovers when, in 1966, Catherine left Fred, returning to Scotland. Anne became pregnant by West, and apparently she demanded he divorce Catherine. But in 1967, Anne vanished. Sadly, nobody reported her as missing. Her dismembered remains and that of her unborn baby were discovered in a field near to West's Muchmarkle home. 1966 also saw Catherine back with Fred, as she missed her daughters. But she found his violent sexual needs too much, and in 1968 Catherine had finally had enough. She left him and her children. In 1971, Catherine apparently went looking for her children. She managed to get the address of Fred's new place, and it's believed she went to confront him about custody of the children. It's also believed he took her somewhere to talk about the children. She was never seen or heard from again. 26-year-old Catherine's remains were discovered in the same field as Anne McFall. It's widely thought that West killed 15-year-old Mary Bastholm, who disappeared from a bus stop in 1968. Her body has never been found. Rosemary West was born into a dysfunctional family. Her father had paranoid schizophrenia. Her mother suffered severe bouts of depression. She and her sister were subject to SA from her father and endured constant beatings from him also. When her mother finally left him, Rose was a teenager. She chose to be with her mother, but for some odd reason, she moved back in with her father when she turned 16. Meeting West. She first met Fred West at a bus stop in 1968. She didn't think much of him, but over time they grew close. He was around 27 and she was just 15. He would take her to the caravan he was living in with his 2 children, and she thought the children didn't look very well looked after, so she decided to help with childcare. She left her job in a baker's shop and helped West with the children. He gave her a wage so she could present it to her father, who thought she was still at the shop. After they had been seeing each other for a few months, Rose took Fred to meet her parents. They disliked him from the start and told him to leave their daughter alone. Obviously that didn't happen, so her father went to social services, who, after hearing that she had started a relationship with an older man and now she had turned to prostitution while staying at his caravan, took 15-year-old Rose to a home for unruly teenagers. Once she turned 16, she was free to return home. She did, but only for a short time, as she was adamant she wanted to be with West. Her father tried to stop her, but by now she was pregnant and she moved in with West. Her father told her never to return to his home. A few months passed, and after moving into a house on Midland Road, Rose would find herself totally immersed into Fred West's life, and the couple would be bound together forever. Rose gave birth to her first child, Heather. But Fred had gotten into trouble again and he was imprisoned for 6 months for theft. While he was away, Rose found herself alone, bringing up 3 children, the oldest being 8-year-old Charmaine. The treatment these young children suffered at the hands of 17-year-old Rose sounds horrendous, as many former neighbours, friends and Anne-Marie testified to. On or around the 15th of June 1971, Rose would kill for the first time. 8-year-old Charmaine vanished. Anne-Marie said that Charmaine had infuriated Rosemary by her refusal to cry, no matter how severe the beatings got. When asked where Charmaine was, once her absence had been noticed, Rose would tell everyone that she had gone to live with her mother in Scotland. In reality, that poor girl's body was wrapped up and hidden in the basement. Until, that is, Fred was released from prison. What transpired between the couple, I don't know, but Fred went on to bury her naked body in the backyard. On the 29th of January 1972, Fred and Rose married. On the 1st of June of that year, Rosemary gave birth to their second daughter, May. Around this time, West encouraged his wife back into prostitution. Rosemary went on to have 7 children, of which some were by other men. Needing a bigger house, the family moved to 25 Cromwell Street, where West converted the upper floors to bedsits. One of the rooms was Rose's room. It was the room Rosemary used for prostitution. It had peepholes so Fred could watch, and a red light outside the door to warn the children not to enter when Mum was busy. In 1973, the Wests hired 17-year-old Caroline Roberts as the children's nanny. She rejected Fred and Rosemary's advances and left a few weeks later. On the 6th of December 1972, the Wests invited her to their home, where they both awed her. Fred allowed Roberts to leave the next day, only after she promised she would return as their nanny. Roberts reported the awe to police, but withdrew the accusation when the police came to court. The Wests pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of indecent assault and were fined £50. In early 1973, the Wests took 8-year-old Anne-Marie to the cellar. They bound and gagged her before West awed her, while Rosemary watched. It was the first of many. In 1979, Anne-Marie became pregnant by West, but the pregnancy was terminated as it was ectopic. She was finally able to leave. She couldn't take any more of Fred and Rose West. Unfortunately, Fred had now also started to abuse his other daughter, Heather. She was rebellious and difficult, apparently, and refused to collaborate with her father's plans. And it's believed she threatened to go to the police about her father. She had just finished her GCSEs when she went missing. Her disappearance was never reported. She was 16 when she was murdered by her parents, and they buried her under the patio in the garden of Cromwell Street in 1987. She was the first victim to be found at Cromwell Street. In May 1992, West filmed himself R-ing one of his other daughters, and twice again after that. Thankfully, she told friends at school what had happened. On August the 4th, one of the friends told her mother, and she went to the police. On the 6th of August 1992, the police investigated the claims. This eventually led to West being charged with R, with Rosemary as an accomplice. She was also charged with child cruelty, and the remaining children were placed in foster care. The R case against the Wests collapsed when their daughter declined to testify at the court case on the 7th of June 1993. But this case brought to light the disappearance of Heather West, who had not been seen since 1987. The police continued investigating the disappearance of their daughter Heather. The police discovered that Heather's national insurance number had never been used, which meant that she had never worked or claimed benefit since her disappearance. Investigating further, they began to think that foul play may well be involved. While the West children were in care, the social workers heard them joking about Heather being buried in the garden under the patio, so they informed the police. So in February 1994, another search warrant was obtained. That would allow them to excavate the garden in search of Heather. And on the 24th of February 1994, they started searching the house and excavating the garden. Fred, who had been informed of the police at his property, was apparently on his way straight home from his job. What was a 20-minute drive took him 4 hours. Nobody knows what he did in those hours, but many people believe he was getting rid of incriminating evidence like the trophies, souvenirs they took. He claims he passed out from the fumes of the paint he was using, but I guess we'll never know. The police worked hard in the back garden, and before long they came across bones buried in the exact place the younger children had described. The pathologist who had been asked to help the police informed them that there was a third leg bone there, so there must be another body. As more remains were unearthed, it became clear that this case was turning into one of the most horrific crimes this country had seen. On the 25th of February, Fred West was arrested. When questioned, he confessed to the killing of his daughter, but after a short time, he retracted his confession, to then re-confess, trying to push the point that Rose had nothing to do with the murders. He then led the police to the graves of the girls buried in the garden. Not once did he mention the bodies in the cellar.
Wait a minute, yeah, this is where we got hell of a problem. We've got to get it all out, sort it out. Yeah. Because I have mixed it up deliberately for the police. She said, I said, with a piss wall out there, what are you worried about? And then she said, oh yeah, there is. And I can remember taking a breath and swallowing it. And I said, what the flaming hell do you mean? She said, Heather's out there. Well, I mean, I just fucking died for a minute. You know, I sit down, I got a fag and I was trying to light it and God knows what. So I said, what do you mean Heather's out there? She said, yeah, Heather's buried out there. So I said, where? She said, at the end of the fence, where the fence used to go across. And I said, right, fucking hell. It seemed as though my whole life stopped there, finished. You know, and I couldn't think of nothing. I mean, Heather, I thought the bloody world of Heather. So anyway, I got to grips with it after a while. And the first thing that came into my mind was, I'm going to have to take this and sort it out. Which I did. All the messes Rose got herself into, I took the fucking rap for him and helped him out of it. So anyway, I said, look, you'll have to tell me exactly what happened. She said that Heather was cut up. Well, I never felt so ill in all my life for a few seconds, a few minutes before I could get a grip of myself again. And I said, what on earth did you cut her up for? She said she wouldn't fit in a dustbin. Now the thing that makes it hard, that she cut Heather up and chucked her in a fucking dustbin. Her daughter in a dustbin.
While in custody, a woman who normally acted as an appropriate adult for young people in police care was brought in to help. Mrs. Leach's job was to assist the police by talking to West and gain his confidence. West would talk to her, and eventually he told her about the other bodies. He even drew a map of the cellar and bathroom, pointing out where the bodies were buried. He also confessed to 2 bodies he had dumped in a field near Muchmarcle. And he admitted to Mrs. Leach that he had killed 15-year-old Mary Bassholm in 1968. But to date, no body has ever been found. Fred West had admitted to all the murders. Rosemary was not arrested until April of 1994, initially on S offences, but she would later be charged with murder. On June 30th, 1994, the Wests were brought before a magistrate's court in Gloucester. Fred was charged with 11 murders, Rose with 10. Fred West was also being held on suspicion of murder for the killing of Anne McFall. He was formally charged with her murder on July 3rd, 1994. On the 1st of January 1995, Fred West hung himself in his cell at Winson Green Prison in Birmingham. Rosemary West did not and has never confessed. She was tried in October 1995 at Winchester Crown Court. The court heard from many witnesses. The things that they had to tell were damning to Rose. They were shocking and horrific. It became too much for the daughter, Anne-Marie, as she told them of the terrible abuse she had suffered at their hands. The trial was delayed a couple of times as, unfortunately, Anne-Marie had tried to take her own life, and Mrs. Leach had become very ill. By the end of the trial, the jury was convinced of Rose West's guilt and found her guilty of all 10 murders. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. The trial judge recommended she would never be released, and this was backed by the Home Secretary. In 1996, 25 Cromwell Street was demolished. All the house debris was crushed and burned. The site was eventually turned into a pathway. The West case became known as one of the biggest police inquiries Britain had ever seen. Were there more murders? The police believe there may be more. We will never know.
Said, what about Linda Golf? I said, you bitch. Because I'd already, whenever she said that, I realised that I thought, fuck me, she'd killed her and had her fucking clothes on. She's wearing the girl's shoes and she'd killed her, for fuck's sake. And her dressing gown. I mean, how fucking far can you go? You know, I said, you wore her fucking clothes after you killed her. She said, I washed it.
Yeah, see, you even got the killing wrong. You're trying to make out I just went out and blatantly killed somebody. No, nobody went through hell. Enjoyment turned to disaster. That's what happened on all of that, or most of it anyway.
Well, Rose rang me at work in the middle of the day, and said the police were digging the garden up. Come home quick. So anyway, I got home. Anyway, Hazel Savage come, and I went down to the police station. I mean, I had nothing to bloody hide. When I walked in here and I sat down there, I could feel my head like lifting up, and I was going sort of into space. And I could see diggers and everything all ploughing round and ripping the house up and tearing the floorboards up and bulldozing the house down. It was all weird, and I could see it all in my mind, and everything was gone wrong. I mean, I don't know what. I can't. I've been trying to explain the feeling, what happened. I don't know if it was a pill or something. That's the only thing I can think it was. I'd done nothing else. You know what? I looked straight across and I could see her. I think she's in a plastic bag. I think you could actually see it in the corner. So there's a big hollow in behind it. If you look underneath the step, you can see straight underneath. There's a big hole. I mean, I can undo 3/4 nuts without a spanner. I mean, just lock them on and turn them on and do them. I mean, I've been squeezed around screws in the neck. I mean, I was before the day, and I mean, I haven't gone that quick. I mean, it's surprising how long somebody can hold you around the neck before you really have to do something like that. I looked around everywhere to try and find a knife or something. I mean, I looked at the axe. I had a chopped axe, and I mean, there's no way I could touch her with it. Not that case or with anything like that. I just couldn't do it. So I looked up and I see this knife sticking out. It got like 2 prongs on the end, 2 sharp points comes out on the end of him, and then it got big serrated edges all along it. You saw blocks of ice with. And I got that, and I tried it with the big ones first, and it was terrible, man. I'm sweating, I'm just about everything's going on this time. So I finally managed to do it, to take her head off, and then her legs. And it was unbearable. And I mean, I can hear that now in my sleep. I wake up very often screaming when I can hear that go in. That's easy, eh? She's looking at me, I thought, it's simple, isn't it? If somebody's sat there looking at you, you're not going to use a knife on a person, are you? I just went like that and closed your eyes and you stayed shut. That was that. I mean, where's this going to end? And by this time I am realising that is 3. 2. Sorry, that's 2, not 3. That was surely where is this going to stop? I have got to stop. I have got to give myself up. I've got to tell Rose so she can get somebody to help me sort that I don't do this thing again. Because the problem I've got, and I know it's a problem, and I knew I should have got help with it. Now, wait a minute. Yeah, this is where we got hell of a problem. We've got to get it all out, sort it out. Yeah. Because I have mixed it up deliberately for the police. I am working out what I'm going to tell the police, how I'm going to handle it. Right? One body, fully clothed, or I thought at the first place, but not by now I know it's cut up, so I have to think out why the bloody hell did I cut her up. I mean, what reason for that did I cut this girl up? That's why I said, well, at least it's only one. I said, so You know, I mean, you could accidentally kill one, but I mean, you wouldn't get away with accidentally killing two, like, sort of thing. That's the thought was going through my mind, like. So I said, well, is that it? Oh no, she said, oh, I don't know, there's 7 or 8, 9, something like that. No. So anyway, Rose told me where the ones in the basement was. I said to Rose, I said, well, fuck me, they ain't done bad, have it? I said, that's fucking... You know, I've got a fucking enough here, haven't you?